All right. Good day, everyone. And thank you for joining today's Ask Me Anything, where we answer your questions about cannabis legalization in New York. We do this every Wednesday at 4:20 p.m. New York City time. I would like to welcome back those of you who have joined us for previous Ask Me Anything sessions. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I hope you will make it a regular occurrence. My name is Jeffrey Hoffman, and I am an attorney here in New York whose legal practice focuses entirely on cannabis. If you would like to contact me, you can do that either here on LinkedIn. I welcome all connection requests, or you can contact me at my email address, which you can see at the bottom of the screen, info@420jurist.com, which I guess you might say makes me the 420 jurist. And as the 420 jurist, I will be answering your questions, roughly half of them from a list of questions I've gotten from previous AMA sessions, and the other half from questions which you post in the comments here today. So if you'd like to ask a question, now is indeed the time to do so. As always, I've got a quick disclaimer, and that is that I am indeed an attorney, but I am not your attorney, at least not yet. I did notice that there are a few of my clients in the audience today, so don't worry, guys, you are still my clients. This doesn't change that. But for the rest of you, I am not your attorney, and today's event is not legal advice, does not create an attorney-client relationship, and is not a solicitation to offer legal advice. And so, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get to the questions. And the first question that we have today is one from a previous session, and that is, how can we find information on community boards in more rural areas outside of NYC? And that is outside of New York City. So, what the question asker is referring to here is that if you are going to be interested in applying for either a retail dispensary license or an on-site consumption license, those two licenses are required to give notice of their intention to apply for such licenses. And the notice has to be given between 30 days and 270 days before the putative applicant wishes to apply. The appropriate form to give notice on will eventually be promulgated by the Cannabis Control Board or the OCM. So there will be a specific form that we'll use. And whom you give that to is going to depend on where in the state of New York you are, or specifically where your cannabis dispensary or on-site consumption lounge will be. And the questioner asked specifically about community boards, and the community board component of this is specific to New York City. So here in New York City, there's roughly 51, I think, community boards. If somebody knows what the exact number is, you can weigh in here. I live in Community Board 7, which is roughly the Upper West Side of New York City. And so these community boards exist all over the city, and they are not elected. They are appointed individuals, and there is an overall board and sub-boards, if you will, and the sub-boards have to do with very specific things that happen within the community board. And one of them is the specific subgroup that deals with businesses and business locations and business licensing. And this is the group that if you want to get a liquor license here in New York City, you have to go before the community board. And you present them usually with, this is where the establishment that is going to get the liquor license is, and here's what we want to do there. And they usually weigh in with their feedback during the meeting, like, we do like the shape of your awning, but we would rather that it would be green rather than brown. and then you go away and decide if you want to make the changes they recommend, and then they are able to send a letter to the state liquor authority indicating whether or not they are in favor of or opposed to you receiving a liquor license. Now, that exact same process is going to happen here in New York City for folks that are looking to apply for the retail dispensary or the on-site consumption lounge licenses. They will similarly notify the community board. They will then likely go in front of the community board, present to the community board their plans for their business and how they're going to operate. And if you're going to do these types of things, I would strongly encourage you to make friends with the community board where you're going to look to get your license. While they do not have an up or down vote, these are important folks. They're going to have a lot of impact on your business during its life cycle, as far as, first of all, this letter that they're going to send to the Cannabis Control Board as to whether or not they think you ought to be able to open a business there. And it's just always better to be friends with your regulators and friends with the folks in your community. You're going to have a much more successful business if you do these things. So again, the community boards here in New York City, they're going to have the exact same role that they do for licensing alcohol for a liquor license here in New York City. And that is having the applicant notify them, come before them and present what it is the applicant's going to look to do, and then putting in a letter with that applicant's application with the appropriate regulating authority. Now, outside of New York City, there really aren't community boards as far as I'm aware. Maybe there's one or two communities where this uniquely occurs, but as far as I know, they don't really exist out of New York City. Now, the law, which indicated that community boards are the appropriate place to give notice and to then do what's going to happen thereafter here in New York City. Outside of New York City, the notification, and again, that notification is going to be on a form promulgated by the Cannabis Control Board and given to you by the Office of Cannabis Management. That form and its notification shall be made to the clerk of the village, town, or city, as the case may be, wherein the premises is located. And that is directly from MRTA, the law which legalized cannabis here in New York State, the pertinent parts of we call the cannabis law. And so that notification will not be to a community board in upstate and in Long Island communities. That notification will be given to the clerk. And my guess is that every locality will implement some type of scenario where perhaps you come before the city council and give your presentation. Now, unlike New Jersey, and just to give a brief heads up on New Jersey, you actually have to get 2 licenses. You first have to get a license from the state board that regulates overall cannabis in the state of New Jersey, and then you have to go to the individual community regulatory or statutory rulemaking authority and get their permission to open. And that is an up or down vote. So you literally in New Jersey have to get 2 up or down votes. So just again, to be very clear, the difference here in New York is you do not have to give 2 up or down votes. It's just the 1 up or down vote from the Cannabis Control Board. Here in New York City, again, you're going to have to give notice to those community boards, and I do believe they're going to ask you to come in front of them, just like they do for liquor licenses. And I do think that upstate, there will be some other non-statutorily binding ask of the putative applicant to just make some kind of presentation to the locality of what they're looking to do. And again, there will not be an up or down vote, but I do believe the community will then be able to submit a letter to the Cannabis Control Board as to whether or not the community is in favor or not of this applicant getting a license. And again, I could just see that being a city council, a board of governors, a board of aldermen, whatever all of the localities upstate call whatever their local governing bodies are. I could see something along those lines happening. All right, let's get to a question out of the comments today. Would love to hear if you have any update on the DASNY Cannabis Design Build Retail Dispensaries program. So I don't know where, Mr. Scudin, you were in the process, so I don't know what would necessarily qualify as an update. So I'm simply going to say where, based on my understanding, things are and where things ought to be going here in the not too distant future. So what is being referred to there is DASNY is the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York. DASNY, vis-a-vis the fund that will be raised in coordination with DASNY, will be managing the $200 million fund that will be used to build the dispensaries for the justice involved individuals. That is the first 100, 150. The number 200 is out there. I don't think they will get to 200. But I do think 100, 150 is a good number. I know a lot of people like to use that number too. So let's just go with 150. Those first 150 retail dispensary licenses under the CAT-ERD license. I just love saying that acronym. So those first 150 or so licensees will be locating in what we are calling the DASNY spaces. There was a little confusion here recently as to whether or not individuals that get this license would have to be in the DASNY spaces. That did seem to get clarified by the OCM recently, that yes, indeed, if you do get that license, at least for the near future and probably medium future, you will have to locate yourself in one of the DASNY spaces. Again, DASNY is going to spend $200 million building these spaces, and they're going to want them full because the way their investors are going to get a return on their investment is from the rent that is paid on the building and upfit for these dispensaries. So that is part of what is going on. There was an RFP put out, which is very specifically what you were referring to. The RFP closed at the end of June, and this RFP was for DASNY to select 0, 1, or more design build partners that will be the individual organizations that will actually build these dispensaries all over the state. And I think you could see them perhaps picking 1 or 2 or more in the New York City area, perhaps 1 in the Buffalo area, maybe 1 in the Albany area, maybe 1 in the Syracuse area, maybe 1 to cover all of the Adirondacks and the greater upstate area. Although I think perhaps your Syracuse or Albany winner of that might handle that area. But picking that design build partner. For me, the most interesting piece of that RFP was a 10-page document that was included as an attachment, which was what they call the concept program. It was basically DASNY telling the design build partner, this is what we want the DASNY spaces to look like as far as a dispensary. You were looking at 3,000 to 5,000 square foot facilities with safes and cameras and all kinds of other security measures, and just everything you would want to see that DASNY is going to want to see in a dispensary space that a design build partner would build for them. Now, if you're not interested in the DASNY spaces or don't qualify for them, which I guess would mean you're also not interested in them, I do think this document is just well worth looking at. It is not a diktat as far as what your dispensary needs to look like. There will certainly be many dispensaries in the state of New York which are smaller than 3,000 square feet, which was the lower bound of what is included in the RFP document. But I think there's going to be 500 and 1,000 square foot stores in places where either the rent is so expensive that that's all the applicant, the licensee can really get into, or just places that are really, really good retail locations where that is the that makes sense. Now, the issue here, as far as what is going to happen, is there's only going to be 150 of these licenses, and it's going to take DASNY a while to build these locations. It's not like 150 locations are going to open all of a sudden on December 1st or January 1st or February 1st. OCM is going through the process now. We're about to see the application be opened for this license. OCM has to give 2 weeks notice for that to happen. I have not looked at their website today or honestly in the past day or two, so I'm not sure honestly if they've given that notice yet, but I imagine my LinkedIn feed would blow up if they had. So I don't think they've given that notice yet. I do think at this point it's possible they will wait to open that application right after Labor Day. I did a lot of IT stuff, managed a few IT companies back in the day, and the last thing you ever wanted to do was launch a mission critical application that you put a lot of work into, that you've maybe had a few more troubles with than you were planning on. The last thing you want to do is launch that over a holiday. You really want all of your IT folks and support folks in their seats when you launch the app. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see the application until right after Labor Day, but it won't be much longer than that. This application is about to happen, and it has to stay open for, yes, I noted, thank you, Mr. Singh, that there is a meeting scheduled for this upcoming Monday. Very well possible that we could see the announcement that day. Again, if it were me, I wouldn't mind waiting an extra week just to not be doing this over Labor Day, but we'll see what happens. Either way, the application is coming. It has to be open for a minimum of 30 days from whenever they open it. And I think they will close it as soon as they feel that they have enough qualified applicants to receive the license. I think it's purely going to, the length of time that the application is going to be open is going to be the only criteria. When the OCM feels that they have 150 to 200 potentially qualified applicants, that'll be it. Or maybe they'll just leave it open, but certainly they're going to wait until they feel that they have enough qualified applicants. As far as picking the design build partners, I've not seen any announcements about that yet. Although obviously the state says they want to get at least one store open before the end of the year. Obviously that will be easier to do outside of New York City. Just pulling permits here in New York City can take you a month or two. So obviously I don't think the first stores will be here in New York City, although maybe in the outskirts, maybe in Brooklyn, closer to the border there up north, maybe in parts further away in Queens, where it's perhaps a little easier to do business as far as opening stores and getting things built. But generally, New York City is a tough place to get this kind of stuff done. So their goal is to get one of those done before the end of the year. So they really do need to get going on that. So I do anticipate hearing about announcing some design build partners pretty soon, getting that application open, like I would say in my mind, no later than right after Labor Day. Start picking some applicants and getting the business going. I saw another question here in the comments. Do you know the cost to apply for the application? For the CATRD license, it's $2,000, non-refundable. So you're giving the state $2,000, and so it's going to be a nice, easy way. I mean, my guess is the state is easily going to get hundreds of applications, if not more. So nice way for the state to pull in a fat chunk of revenue. I mean, obviously nothing compared to what eventually the cannabis industry is going to bring in. But again, just for putting up an application, it's a nice amount of revenue. If 1,000 people apply, that's $2 million. So that's pretty good. So that's the cost. I do anticipate. So it's interesting. This first license is clearly related to the justice program that the Cannabis Control Board is mandated to implement. They are mandated by law to implement an equity program, and I include justice under equity. And so this justice involved individual license clearly is going towards that equity mandate. In the law, it does say that social and economic equity applicants, that their licensing fees are to be reduced or waived. And I do think this $2,000 number is a pretty good number to perhaps anchor for what social equity applicants might pay for other licenses. Again, the point of this license was an equity play, a justice play. So $2,000 is what they are charging those individuals. So I really think I think that's what you could see perhaps social and economic equity applicants paying as far as the reduced fees for 6 of the 9 standard licenses. The other 3 of the standard licenses, that is the nursery, the micro, and the delivery, in the law, it says those are specifically to be promoted to social and economic equity applicants. So I could see a universe where those 3 licenses are given waived fees, right? That the law says reduced or waived fees. So I could see this $2,000 number being the reduced number generally. So maybe that's what a social and economic equity applicant pays, maybe for any of the 6 licenses, the cultivator, the processor, the distributor. I think that would be neat and perhaps well served. And then again, since in the law it says reduced or waived, I could see perhaps those other 3 licenses where the law says these are specifically to be promoted to social and economic equity applicants. I could see those being waived, no license fee. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and see what happens. I just did see in the comments, Brooke Ann has joined us. So hello, Brooke Ann. For folks that may not know, we've been working diligently with Brooke Ann to get her husband, Umberto, out of a ridiculous situation in the state of New Jersey. And the great news is he's coming home on September 16th. We've successfully gotten his judgment of conviction revised with the help of a lot of folks, including Kathleen, who is absolutely my favorite former public defender in the state of New Jersey. So we will be in New Jersey with Brooke Ann, celebrating with her and Umberto when he comes home. So Brooke Ann, love you, doll, and I can't wait to see you in September. And I know Brooke Ann is going to be working with me, and I know Umberto is going to be working with me. As I've told everyone, I'm going to be working on a lot of justice initiatives here in the near future. And one of the big things that's going to happen here, we're getting ready to do our initial pilot program for that, is we're going to be reaching out to folks in communities in the Bronx, one community in particular. And I'm not going to release that yet, although I did see, hello, Shaquana. Shaquana is actually going to be helping me with this. So Shaquana has joined the team. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, Shaquana is the tip of the spear, right? She is the one that is really going to be leading the effort up in the Bronx. So what we're going to be looking to do is, as everyone knows, from MRTA, you are getting all of the very low-level cannabis convictions expunged. So if you were arrested and convicted of having a dime bag in the 80s here in New York, which was moronic, it's the dumbest thing our society has ever done to itself. Don't get me started. Let me stay on topic. But if you got convicted of that, your conviction is going to get automatically expunged. But you need to still go to the courthouse, or you need to get your representative, your attorney, to go to the courthouse and get the copy of your certificate of disposition, which shows specifically that your conviction has been expunged and sealed. So most folks don't know that that has happened. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into, like I said, one pilot program up into the Bronx, and we're going to start handing out a little rave card. Those of you that like to go to raves with me in the 80s and 90s, you'll remember there were these little rectangular cards that were about this big that told you which warehouse the rave was going to be at on Saturday night. So these rave cards are going to point everybody to a website where we tell them about these expungement things. One, low level, you get expunged automatically, but go and get your disposition, your certificate of disposition document. Two, if you had a higher level cannabis conviction, you can't get automatically expunged, but we need to file what's known as a 440 motion in the court where you were convicted. And Miss Dance, if you know people that have these issues, please refer them to me. We are looking for, this is what we're doing up in the Bronx, and we're trying to get everybody that's going to need help with this. We got the pipeline coming. We've got law firms that are ready to help with the 440s. We've got lots of pro bono attorneys here in New York, some of whom know they're going to be doing this, many of whom don't know they're going to be doing this, but you are now on notice. This is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be filing 440s for all of these folks so that their convictions get vacated or otherwise modified. Anyway, and then the last thing is, if there is anyone still incarcerated in the state of New York for a nonviolent cannabis offense, much like Mr. Ramirez was in the state of New Jersey for a nonviolent cannabis offense, again, the dumbest thing our society's ever done to its citizens, but don't get me started, they got to come home, just like Mr. Ramirez is coming home. So those are the things we're doing. I'm going to be working with Shaquana to start letting folks know in one of the communities in the Bronx that was disproportionately impacted by cannabis enforcement. We're going to get the message out. We're going to get everybody their certificates of disposition, and we're going to get everybody that needs a 440 filed, and we're going to find out if there are folks that are incarcerated, because if they are, Governor Hochul will be pardoning them. Watch. This is what we're going to make happen. So that's what's going on. Thank you, Brooke Ann, for working with us. I know you're going to be an amazing partner as we do this stuff with Shaquana, who's going to be the tip of the spear, and we're going to get this done here in the state of New York. A state which incarcerates people or penalizes people for activities for which the state is profiting from is committing a crime against humanity. And while they're still doing it in New Jersey, despite the fact that they finally figured it out and are going to let Umberto go home, we're not going to do that here in New York. And if we are doing it in New York, we're going to be fixing that very, very quickly. All right, let's actually get back to some more questions. I know that was kind of long-winded, but I think everybody gets that has been on these things before. These justice issues are just incredibly important to me. Everybody's got to know about them, and everybody's got to work on it. Even if you don't have something specific to do, just say you support us and forward our LinkedIn post about it to everyone you know, because this stuff is important. All right, let's get back to another couple of questions. We got about 5 minutes left here. If the first round of dispensary licenses go to applicants with past cannabis-related convictions, will there be a second round of licenses that go to those without cannabis-related convictions? Absolutely. And in fact, there was a round of licenses that before the round for folks with convictions that were for folks that were not with convictions. So let's just give a quick overview of where we are with licensing and what's going on here in New York. So the first licenses that were given out, the first one that was given out was the conditional cultivation license. If you were in the hemp in the state's hemp program, growing hemp for I believe it was 2 years previously, you could file an application. It was a pretty simple application, and you were able to get what is known as a conditional adult use cultivation license. And that those farmers, there's about 200 and so of them, they are now growing the first adult use cannabis crop in the state of New York. They are growing the cannabis that these folks that are going to be applying for their licenses here very soon are going to be selling. There is a second license, and that is the conditional processing license. Both of those licenses were created by the legislature, so there was no regulatory review period for them. The application is open for that conditional processor license now. I believe it ends at the end of the month. And again, those are folks that were in the state's hemp processing program, and they're going to be able to get a conditional license to process adult cannabis. That is, they have a conditional license to create vape oil or shatter or edibles or whatever else is they want to do. Now, the license that the application is going to open for either in the next couple of weeks if they announce it on Monday, or right after Labor Day, which again I think is safer, but do whatever you want to do. We're not going to lose a lot of time either way. That is the license that is specifically for individuals that were convicted of a cannabis offense or were arrested for a cannabis offense and convicted for something else. So to speak, the fruit of the poisonous tree. That's not really what that means for us lawyers. And in just case you want to know, the fruit of the poisonous tree means, let's say we collected some evidence and it turns out that the search that we used to get that evidence was a bad search. Anything we got from that poisonous tree, that is that bad search that we did, any fruit that we got from that poisonous tree, we can't use at trial. So just kind of similarly, that's kind of what's going on in this situation. So that'll be that same license here, and then they'll give out that license, and then what I'm calling the 9 standard licenses. Again, those are the 9 licenses that directly appeared in MRTA, the law that legalized cannabis. Those 9 licenses, I guess, are what the questioner was referring to as a second round. It's not clear that all 9 of those licenses will be issued at the same time. It's entirely possible that the Cannabis Control Board will roll out regulations piecemeal for each of those 9 licenses, one at a time, and then similarly open the applications piecemeal, one at a time. It's also possible that they release them all at the same time. I think it's probably more likely that they get released piecemeal. It's possible that, for example, they might do the cultivation and processing license together first, maybe the distribution license along with those, what I am calling the upstream licenses. Maybe they do all 3 of those first, because those are kind of linked, meaning if you get a cultivation license, you can also get one processing license and one distribution license, which can only be used for the cannabis that you cultivated. But so for that reason, it does kind of make sense to have those 3 come together. But we'll see. The Cannabis Control Board will make that decision and do what they feel is best for the cannabis industry here in the state of New York. All right. So we're right at 4:50. So I think we're going to call it for the day. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We do this every Wednesday at 4:20 p.m. So thank you, everyone, for joining today, and we certainly hope you'll join us for other sessions in the future. If you're not currently a connection of mine on LinkedIn, please reach out to me and become a connection. I welcome all connection requests. And this is the point where I usually go off about the justice issues, the expungement and the end of incarceration, which I did at length in today's session. So I'm not going to repeat that now. But just once again, thank you everybody for participating, and have a great rest of your afternoon and a great week. And we hope to see you next week. Have a good one, everybody.